Hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to my channel. Okay, so I got an email today from Jasmine who asked, what can I do with squash? That gave me the idea of creating this video today about acorn, apple, and sage soup. So stay tuned with me and I'll walk you through the recipe step by step.
All right, let's get started. We're gonna take an acorn squash. Now this recipe normally requires 2, but for the purpose of this recipe and this video, I'm just gonna use 1. So here I am trimming off the ends. Just make sure you wash it thoroughly with some warm water, and I use a little sea salt just to exfoliate the skin. And then once I have trimmed the ends, I'll just cut it in half and I'll remove the seeds. Now, I don't like wasting. You know, you've seen previous videos. Well, I don't like wasting anything. So the seeds, you can actually, soak them and remove I call it connective tissue, or that fleshy part that's connected to the seeds, and put it in your air fryer or your oven and use as a garnish, or you can eat it. I like to just pop it in my air fryer, and I'll show you how to do that in just a second. So you just turn it on, and my air fryer has a dehydrate setting, and I just pop it in for about 4 to 8 hours. It's going to take that long because it's only set at 135 degrees. You want it at your lowest setting so they don't burn. Okay, so once they finish in a dehydrator, you can actually just put a little salt on it and you're ready to go. Again, you can use it as a garnish, or you can actually just eat them as is. I like them, like pumpkin seeds. So now we're gonna prepare for baking. We're gonna take a little bit of either olive oil. I like to use avocado oil, and I'm just gonna brush some directly on the skins, the cut side down, skin side up, and make sure the entire surface is covered with either olive oil or avocado oil, or you can even use grapeseed oil if you like. Okay, so now we're gonna prepare the oven for roasting our beautiful acorn squash. Now, because I'm here in Mexico, I'm gonna set it at about 180 degrees, between 180 degrees to about 200 degrees. Now that's in Celsius. So that's somewhere between 350 degrees and 400 degrees Fahrenheit. All right, so we're gonna pop these babies in the oven and just let them go for about 30 minutes. Then we're gonna check it, and then we're gonna allow it to roast for an additional 15 minutes, just to make sure that they are thoroughly baked or roasted. So once they're done roasting, we're just gonna pull them out and we're gonna test it. See how it's changed colors a little bit? It's beautiful and it's gold, kind of like a reddish, orangey, golden color. But you see that little bit of char around the edges as you flip the flesh side over, and that lets you know it's done. Okay, let's gather our ingredients. We have a medium onion, we have carrots, we have the cooked acorn squash, some beautiful apples. I like Honeycrisp. You can use Pink Lady, you can use Cosmo, you can use Gala, just the sweet apples. And then we're gonna use some garlic and ginger and sage and fresh thyme. And we're also gonna use some silky coconut milk to make this a really rich soup. All right, so let's get started with the onions. All right, so we're gonna just slice them crossways, and then we're gonna cut them down the middle, and then we're gonna make some dices. So once we do that, we're gonna just make sure that we've done both halves, and we just wanna make sure that the dices are evenly cut, so that, it reduces the cooking time. And watch your fingers. As I mentioned before, I don't have my knives because I'm in Mexico, and so I'm using the equipment that's in the house of the host. And I'm actually on a house sit in this beautiful home. So I have to use what's available. So I'm just using their ceramic chef knives, and I'm just doing the best I can with what I got. All right, so now that we're finished cutting up these beautiful onions, we're gonna move on to our carrots. And so we're just gonna slice them and dice them, small dice that is. If you have some pre-cut ones that's already cut into spears, you can use those as well, as opposed to cutting up whole carrots. But Yeah, either way, you can use whole carrots and trim them down, or you can find them in your produce section where they're pre-cut into spears. You can use that as well. So now I'm just gonna give this surface a nice cleaning, and my ceramic knife just a little cleaning with these beautiful Mexican towels that I found here. And you can find them in the description box because they're lovely towels that come in beautiful colors. Okay, so now we're gonna continue with this recipe by removing the flesh of the acorn squash and just putting them into the bowl. So you can almost peel them because they're roasted so well, you really don't need to cut them. Just take your fingers and just pull back the skin, and you're just gonna put the flesh right into a bowl, and then we're gonna set that to the side. Now, if you don't like acorn squash, you can use spaghetti squash, and you can also use butternut squash. It'll produce the same flavor notes. It's sweet, it's light, and it's not starchy like root vegetables. And it just really tastes so much better when you roast them. So you can use, again, either acorn squash, butternut squash, or spaghetti squash. So now I'm gonna core my apples. Again, I love using Honeycrisp apples. If you find those really big Honeycrisp apples, you'll only need one for this recipe. And I'm gonna use 2 for this particular recipe. Now, I love to test myself to see if I can peel apples and leave the core intact with one peeling. It rarely happens, but let's see what happens. No, it doesn't look like I'm gonna be able to connect the, and see, it fell off. I've never been able to do that, but I just love to watch when people can peel an apple and leave the core intact. Okay, so once we finish peeling, we're gonna just remove all of the skin around the core, cut it in half, and just remove the pit as well. All right, so now we're gonna prepare the vegetable broth. I'm using this, it's not really powdered, but it is like, I guess a vegetable broth that is in granules, and then I just add water. So you're gonna make 2 cups. So the ratio is 2 teaspoons of the granules and 2 cups of water. You just combine that together, and I'll put that to the side because we're gonna add it to the pot in just a second. Okay, so now I'm gonna add 2 tablespoons of either olive oil, grapeseed oil, or avocado oil. The oil of your choice. I prefer avocado oil, as you know. So now I'm gonna add the vegetables to saute them until the onions are translucent, and then I'm gonna add the apples until they're nice and softened. Okay, so now I'm gonna add my spices. As I mentioned before, we're using sage and thyme and garlic and ginger. We're just gonna add all of those right into the pot with the cooked vegetables and the apples. And we're gonna allow that to cook down just a little bit. And you know what? I decided to add like a half teaspoon of turmeric just to give it a nice golden color. It's gonna beautify the recipe. And of course, we're gonna add the dried sage. You can use fresh sage as well, but I'm using dried because I didn't have any fresh sage in the garden this time around. So I'm just gonna add all of that, combining it until it's incorporated, and then I'm gonna let that cook down just a little bit. So now I'm going to add the cooked acorn squash, and I'm just going to take a fork. You can use a potato masher and just mash it down. You don't have to worry about, it being mashed like mashed potatoes, or, so mashed that it's thoroughly mashed until it's puree. You don't have to worry about that because we're going to go back and actually add this to a blender. So now I'm adding my broth. And again, I'm going to stir it until it's well combined. And then I'm going to just allow all these flavors to marinate, and then allow the apples to soften even more, and just allow everything to come together. I'm just going to add a lid and let that go for about 5 to 7 minutes. Okay, I'm just checking. So now it's boiling a little bit. And I'm just going to check it for doneness, and it looks like the apples are nice and softened, so we'll continue to the next step. All right, so now we're just going to turn off the eye of the stove, and we're going to just place everything into a blender. Now, if you don't have a blender, you can always use an emulsifying tool, and you can emulsify everything right in the pot. But in this case, I have a blender. I'm just going to transfer everything into the blender. Just be very careful when you're doing this, because the steam can add some pressure to the lid when you try to add the lid, and it could pop off. So I just recommending either holding the lid down or putting a towel over the lid, just to make sure that you don't get kickback from the soup ingredients and you don't get burned. All right, so now we're just gonna put it on the base and allow it to blend for about 2 minutes. But before we do that, the last ingredient we're gonna add is the coconut milk. So you see that steam inside of, you see how it kicked back a little bit? You wanna make sure you're adding some pressure to the top, you're holding it down, or you're using a towel to hold it down, just in case you get a little leakage and some of that hot soup ingredients tries to pop out of the top. But you definitely want to blend it while it's still hot so that everything incorporates nicely. Okay, believe it or not, the soup is done, and this is how it'll look. It looks very rich and creamy, and all the ingredients have incorporated nicely. So I'm gonna take a ladle and just ladle this right into a bowl. You see it's still steamy hot. I like to serve this right away. I'm gonna garnish it with some fresh parsley. You can garnish with some fresh or dried sage. And remember the acorn squash seeds that I said you could dehydrate? You can actually use that to use it as a garnish for this soup, which would actually really complement the soup and just make it really attractive, So really that's it. This is a wonderful soup you can do in less than 1 hour, because you have to consider baking time or roasting time. And this is it, a wonderful winter soup that is satisfying and nutritious. Thanks for watching. I appreciate you, and I'll see you on the next video.